Hey Toby, what do you want to do today?
Exactly the same as every day, Bibi. We will conquer the world.
But we already did that yesterday, didn't we?
Really? Then, well, what about talking about creativity? Cars can't fly? We show you that with creativity, everything is possible and that this wonderful ability is in every single one of us.
Listen now and learn more about your personal creative ability and its importance for you, for organizations, and for society. Hello and welcome once again to our podcast, Talking Creativity. Here we are today in lovely Munich. It's not as sunny as expected, but it's still wonderful because we have two great colleagues here. One you already know. You should know because
Who's
you
that?
listen to his lovely voice every single time you hear this podcast. Mr. Tobias Eismann, how are you today?
Actually, a little bit tired.
Why?
I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, had a shower, and I'm now into the mood of having those ice cold shower endings. I don't know. That's like train your body or like ice bath. I don't know.
No, I would never do that.
Yeah, I also was kind of that kind of person, but now I thought, Toby, that makes you stronger. And then I thought, okay, let's do that in the morning. But 4:30 in the shower, like ice cold, that's really tough. And then I had to catch the train around 5:50.
And why did you have to get up so early?
Because I had a session actually in 8 o'clock in the morning with our colleagues from Asia because of the time difference.
So your second meeting then.
Second meeting, yeah, basically. It's not a meeting. It's rather like a really nice conversation. So it doesn't feel like work. But I'm feeling comfortable, good, just a little bit tired, Bianca. What about you?
I'm good. Actually, I'm okay because I had to drive. In the very early morning, I was tired, but now it's okay. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. And I'm actually heading to another great trip on the weekend afterwards. So I'm looking forward to something.
What is it?
It's Berlin.
Oh, I love Berlin.
Oh, yeah.
That's on my
Berlin
list.
too.
What's happening?
My wife's not been to Berlin before.
No
so,
way.
Yeah, and I mentioned, before we were talking that she's an artist and there's a lot of good things to do in Berlin.
For artists, I think it's a really great place
Yeah.
to explore and meet other artists as well. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, but dear listeners, you already heard the voice of our guest. Maybe you're curious to hear.
It's Mark Zuckerberg. Elon Musk.
Mark is a good direction.
We have Olaf Scholz here today.
Almost.
Well,
Should we ask
at
him,
least-
introduce him?
I would say even more important than Olaf Scholz, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to tell my wife that later.
I'm going to send the recording over. Okay, let's start it off. We have a few questions, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. So are you ready for some questions so that our listeners get to know you a little?
Sure.
Okay, let's start. First question, where are you coming from right now?
Right. So right now where I'm coming from is actually here in Munich. So I'm living here for a few months working on the Werner von Siemens Awards. And particularly, I'm looking at the accelerator category. So a lot of really cool things that we're doing with Siemens Accelerator. But probably before that, because you can tell from my accent, I'm American. I'm work in Siemens Technology in Princeton, New Jersey. Do a lot of work on right now, especially with generative AI and new ways of teaching machines to be creative and design things and manufacture things.
Nice.
Sounds great.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
It's funny. I've always liked mathematics, so it was just always my thing. So when I went to the university, it was still that. I went started out as a math major. Found out you had to take a language, and I thought, well, I'm going to take Russian. That's a really good language for mathematicians.
You're forced to take a language when you take the major in math?
Americans, yeah. So, we don't. So, yeah. So in that department, and I studied really hard, and I have no talent for languages, and I did really bad, and it was like, oh well, if I go to the engineering department, they don't have that requirement for languages. So then I switched over to mechanical engineering. So it's still really heavy in mathematics and so on.
So we can be lucky that you're not good in languages to have you
Yeah,
here.
but the funny part was the first job I got out of the university was with Michelin, and the first thing they did was they put me in a French class. And so then it was like, oh, you're gonna learn French, and so I tried really hard, and finally they went to my boss and said, he's really not picking up these languages. We're gonna kick him out. And a few months after that, they sent me to France. So then it's like in the middle of France, Clermont-Ferrand. So then I had to learn. So it's
Are you able to speak French?
Yeah, je parle français un petit peu, pas vraiment bien, mais I speak
Très
French
bien.
a little
Better
bit.
than me.
But yeah.
I also forgot everything, almost everything, I think.
Yeah. So I'm working on German now, but my German is pretty much, ich spreche keine Deutsch. Es tut mir leid. I don't speak German, I'm sorry.
Life's too short to learn German, so. So next question, if you want to answer it, of course. How old do you feel and how old are you really?
Oh, yeah. So I'm 57. So, and my challenge right now is, I think a lot of people, when you get to my age, it's like, oh, you've had a good career. We'll find a nice job. You can relax and just wait for retirement. And so I don't feel that at all. Every time I get any boss, it's like, listen, I'm not ready to retire. There are some cool things out there going on. So, it's in that case, it's maybe not an age that I feel, but certainly I'm in that range where the people that I enjoy working with, especially my team right now, a lot of folks in their 30s and the new people coming in. And so you don't want to stereotype, but that age is the one I'm really comfortable with because they have so many cool ideas and they're wanting to do big things.
Nice.
And that's who I'd like to hang out with.
What's your favorite outfit?
Oh, well, you should ask me in a few weeks because I just bought some lederhosen.
Oh,
No, for the Oktoberfest.
I am totally so. My
but
last
not the fake ones.
Not the
It's
fake
like a
ones.
bath thing.
I went on. Go on the expatriate says, where's the place I can get the cheapest lederhosen but not be laughed at by the Bavarians? so because I don't know when I'm going to wear them, but I have some now. So
That's
so
what
that
we want
may
to hear.
be.
But that's what we want to hear. Favorite outfit, lederhosen.
Yeah,
right?
lederhosen. The other thing that's been kind of fun too is I tend to wear brighter clothes sometimes, but as again, I don't want to stereotype, but Bavaria tends to be more muted colors. So if you go someplace to India or Mexico or someplace in the United States, it's these bright colors. So yeah.
Next question. What really excites you?
Oh, I like building things, and so
Lego. You enjoyed Lego?
I get relatives that really enjoy Legos. So yes, and I've actually printed some here. I don't have it with me here, but Lego's a really good example. But it tends to be more the maker spaces and the maker labs that I get involved in. So that means if you go in my basement, I have 3 or 4 3D printers down there. I do have a lot of electronics, Arduino, and things like that. So. It tends to be again, I'm on a budget, on my personal budget, so it tends to be some of these things that a lot of young people at the university are using. And then at work, though, it's nice because Siemens has a bigger budget than I have. So again, I get to do kind of the same thing, but with really cool, high-power additive machines, really cool, high-power software, really advanced algorithms, and so on. So that's what I like to do.
Nice. And surprise us with a crazy, funny, special, or amazing fact about yourself. Anything?
Oh gosh, what do the funny one is the language one. I think I told earlier. No, and like I said, the one thing, which since we're talking about creativity, we're talking about, I think some engineers think they're very creative, and I thought I was too, but. The interesting part was I married my wife, who's an artist, and you realize that there's so much more to creativity than just an on-off switch. And then the other part is when an engineer marries an artist, the kids. Well, my son is an industrial designer, so you get an industrial designer. So that's kind of cool too. So I think anytime an engineer can team up with an industrial designer, you can really do some great things. iPhones are good examples of some of those things.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Math.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you could go down into now the particular parts of math that I like and things like that. But yeah, I just always love math.
Easy one.
Yeah.
What trait do you like most about yourself? Patience.
No patience. Patience is not one of my good ones.
Same here.
It's sometimes I want things to go quickly, and especially frustrating sometimes because especially with AI and things that have software, the pace is so quick. And so with Siemens, sometimes we tend to think a longer term, because we're maybe focused more on developing trains and buildings that are going to be, you could plan them out very very long term. So patience is not it. Probably the one that I'm best at would be, other than the math, would be the creativity. Not creativity. I'm sorry. Collaboration.
Okay.
So this is how we mentioned Inventor of the Year in 2022, and this was really for collaboration. So collaborating with universities, collaborating with some other companies as well. Here, the same thing. I'm talking a lot to folks in DIMC. I'm talking to people in DIFA. I work all the time with DISW that makes all the design software.
A lot of abbreviations. Many people may not understand.
And that's what this is all. So this, you get in the habit of doing that at Siemens sometimes.
Yes,
different
it's
departments.
a typical Siemens.
You talk to the people that are doing the factory automation and robots. You talk to the people that are doing design software and simulation that design the automobiles and spaceships and satellites, and you talk to the people that are doing the trains and so on. So there's a lot of opportunities with some of these new generative AI type things that we're talking about. So these are all good things to do. So
okay, what are you most afraid of?
I don't know. I honestly can't really think of anything I'm afraid of right now.
Something like heights or anything.
Getting laughed at because of your Lederhosen?
No, that's a funny one because I think when I was younger I used to worry about getting laughed at, and now it's like, who cares anymore? Yeah, it's like, lederhosen, I'll wear it, and so I'll take a few more risks and things like that. Not afraid of heights.
Spiders.
When you're younger, you worry more about how's my career advancing. In the United States especially, maybe you worry about, am I saving enough for retirement, all those things. So I'm kind of at the end now where I really like what I do. So there's no need to.
That sounds really nice.
Yeah.
But one question, is it that because you're now very much exploring new technologies and stuff, and also investing, I think, quite a lot of money on that. Are you sometimes afraid that, oh no, maybe it's not gonna work, or this is not gonna have a future, or something like that?
So that's a really good one too. So I get very enthusiastic about new technologies, and one of the nice things about being older now is, I would get very excited about something, and it was so obvious it was going to be the next big thing, and then that never was.
Yes.
So now I still let myself get excited, but I'm a little more tempered on because of those experiences of that. But the nice thing in Siemens T is that we're a research group, so we have to be looking at these next big things, and even the research may be we need to research this, and we find out, well, maybe it's not going to be, or maybe it's going to longer timeline or other things like that. So,
what is your best memory from childhood?
That's an interesting one. So, my grandfather used to build things, and he had a nice shop downstairs, and
where was that in the United States?
He was in Chicago, but so again, the connection. I'm American. I don't speak German, but my genetics is mostly German. So he was his Clarence Vogel. Came from, his family came over here from Germany. Actually, the side over by France, in Strasbourg. And they bought the house, the first house, they'd finish it out, and he used to take me downstairs and show me his leatherworking or his other things like that. So those are really nice, fond memories, and then it kind of builds on it as well. So now I didn't call him grandfather, I called him Poppy. And now I have grandkids, and they all call me Poppy. So I'm continuing the legacy and so on. And even my grandson, he's 7 right now, but he's learning CAD software, very similar to the software that Siemens is developing to design things. So it's really, nice. It's kind of fun.
Okay, now let's speed up for the last questions a little, because I think we have a lot of time spending for the introduction. Are you trying to learn something new? If yes, what?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, I'm going to ruin all your time again here. The coolest thing going on right now for me is, I'll try to keep it simple, but it's called generative AI. So if you go on creative side, you would say creation, and maybe there's a style to things. And on the engineering side, you could replace creation with generation, and style maybe more process or something. So the cool thing right now is being able to generate things, so create things, create geometry, create new products. There's a lot of creation in manufacturing. You don't realize that. You think, the design part's the hard thing. Then you just go manufacture it, and it's not like that at all. The manufacturing in many times is more complicated. So getting AI is, especially what they're calling large language models, and in this new transformer architecture, complicated words, but essentially you're teaching these machines to write like Shakespeare, or to do translations, or to do them in different styles. So let's take it to the next level. Let's have it create designs. Let's have it set up the manufacturing for everything. And it's just a really rapidly moving area, and I'm really enthusiastic about it. My team is enthusiastic about it. I say me, but there's a whole team in TSDT, which is Simulation Digital Twin, that's working on these new projects, and working with other groups within T as well they're experts on this.
What do you want your life to look like in 5 years? Everything's generated by AI.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Lean back and let AI work.
Siemens likes to talk about let's talk about your growth strategy. And for every employee, it's like, what do you want to be doing the next few years? And I really like what I'm doing. The fun thing for me is the technologies keep changing and growing so quickly. So what I'm doing now is, again, adapting to these new technologies, finding the value in them for Siemens, and then helping our business units, profit from that. I really like what I'm doing right now. I'm really excited about some of these things with generative AI and basically teaching these machines to be creative. And I suspect there's a lot there to do for the next few years. Go ahead.
We already heard it, but once again, can you say in one short sentence, what do you do at Siemens?
What's your job?
What's your job?
Title? In one sentence.
Like
tough one.
Short and crisp.
I teach machines to be creative.
Oh, can a machine really be creative?
There's so then what's the definition of creativity?
We're gonna dive into that later.
Yes,
but we need to finish your introduction. Do you have any nicknames, Mark? Marky.
M.A.
None that I like.
Okay. So you don't need to share it, but if you want to.
My oldest son started calling me Bernard a few years ago. Bernard. I have no idea.
And it's really close to your real name.
It's not anywhere near it. And again, he's the creative one, so I'm sure there's some logic to it and some good reason for it. But
Okay. So Bernard, what's your real name?
Mark Burhop.
Nice.
Burhop.
Yeah.
So finally, hello Mark, and welcome to our podcast, Talking Creativity. That was actually the longest introduction we had, was it?
I told you, you're gonna have to shut me off here. Just
20 minutes.
No, it's fine, I guess. It's okay. I mean, you have so many interesting stuff to tell us, so let's just take the time for that. So we would dive into the topic. You'd already addressed it. What is actually creativity? Because this is why we are here today. So you actually said it already. What does creativity actually mean to you? How would you define it for yourself?
I'll define it for myself, but I think the people listening, and I think you all in this room have a better definitions than I have. But here's kind of where I'm at right now. I think there's a couple parts here. One is this kind of this creativity of creating new ideas, new art, new products that you didn't think about before. So I don't always see myself as having that particular kind of talent. It's something that I have to work on. But I do see it in my wife. I see it in my son. So I have people to kind of emulate. But I think it's super important. So if you are not exercising that muscle, at least get involved with other people that are or that have that.
Would you say yourself you are a creative person? Do you
think
you're creative?
I would say so. If you go back to the root of the word to create, that I do. So I create things all the time. Again, I mentioned I have a lab in my basement. It's pretty much my whole basement. Where I have 3D printers and woodworking machines and all kinds of things. Things for doing electronics, and so I'm creating things all the time there. Same at work. So in terms of also my work teaching the machines to create. So we're going to a new level where the machine isn't just guiding you or saying, hey, I want to draw this. Help me draw lines. Help me draw 3D shapes. It's actually generating some of that at another level. I think that is maybe the creativity, the creation part that I'm focused on.
And have you seen any difference throughout your life where you would say, well, I was probably not so creative in the beginning of my life, and I trained my creativity in a way, but now I see when I compare myself with 10 years back, 20 years back, I see that I'm now more creative, and do you see that? And do you see any reasons why it's like that?
I think, in my case, I like hanging around creative people, and so it's two things. You learn from them, but it's also a driver to do better and be more creative. I think, like many engineers will say, and we talk about some engineers are creative, some are not. Mm-hmm. Many engineers would say they are creative. But are you just saying that, is that your talent, or are you taking classes to be more creative? Are you going through workshops to really expand out on how to do some of those things? So I would say those are the things that other people should be doing to really not just rely on their natural creativity, but also push it and exercise it and do other things there.
I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Yes,
but I assume you're working a lot with other engineers together.
Yeah.
So do you see that others do invest time in developing further their creativity during their work life or experience? Or because now you are really, I think, aware of you have to be creative or of your creativity itself. But what do you experience with other colleagues? How do they handle it, and do they actually invest in their creativity?
Yeah, I think as a group, engineers should invest more on these things, or if they don't invest more, they should collaborate more with people that are doing these things.
So you say they should, so they actually not really
I don't think they do it enough. Yeah,
okay.
I think that's it's a hard thing because engineers tend to be very technical and.
Thank you for telling that.
Oh, really? Oh,
that's nice because that's a reason why we're here, and it's nice to hear.
So unfortunately, we should have talked before that, and then I can really be plugging everything here. But that's kind of my opinion too.
Yeah.
But I would like to see more. Especially the really hardcore technical. So it's engineers and scientists. So I work with a lot of folks. Most of my group, PhDs in some technology. But I think being able to solve a hard problem is only the first step. Coming up with something really creative, and then the problems that come out of that to solve are really the real fun thing.
Do you also reflect, because you're talking about your team, so you're leader of a team basically, do you reflect on how you actually basically guide your team or orchestrate your team to be more creative, or how do you do that as a leader?
I'm more of a, I've been team leaders before, but at this time it's more collaboration. So we're all working together. And the things we do, are kind of basic things, but I have a bunch of, colleagues that are, again, engineers and scientists. Go to the coffee pot. We make a ritual going to the coffee pot and talking, and we don't talk. We might talk about work, but we'll come up with new ideas in there. And even during COVID, we kept our meetings going for a lot of those things. So. But it's always hard.
So you have kind of those rituals implemented?
Which is exactly what it is. Yeah, it's kind of a ritual. Now, you don't get everybody showing up, too, because, again, that type of ritual is like, maybe it's just a discussion of what you did for a vacation. But maybe it's, that's a really good idea. I didn't think about that funding opportunity with DARPA. We have some really good ideas for it. So, So I think some of those rituals are really good.
Okay.
It's actually interesting because you're taking time not to focus on really, now is the time to be creative, but now is the time to get off of the things we normally do during our work life and let some time for our brain to also explore some other topics. And this is how ideas also flow.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
What are the circumstances that make you creative or make your ideas flow? Probably you can refer to one of those rituals you implemented where you're saying, hey, it's like, I don't know, more like a free setup. And we had an interesting discussion at the Inventor of the Year Award about that too. And where do the ideas come from? And one of the professors I work with is like, well, they did just come to me. I'm in the shower. I just and out of nowhere, and and why is that?
I don't know.
I can tell you.
You can tell me. Tell me, please, because this is what I want to know. This is
okay. But you're reflecting on that because that's so interesting. Because in the end, creativity is such a wonderful ability that is still so so fuzzy and. I don't know, misunderstood in a way, I guess, that is really, in my point of view, very shocking because when you look into World Economic Forum and Future of Jobs report, for example, just published in May this year, they state that creativity is today number 2 of the most important abilities of people and leaders. And then they have another survey asked the people, hey, what are the abilities that have the highest growth in importance for the future? Creativity is number 1. So obviously we know it's important, but we don't really take the time very often in organizations to reflect and to push that ability. Yeah. But why is that happening under the shower? That's basically pretty simple, but it's a reason how our brain works. And there are neuroscientists like Roger Beatty from Penn State University. They are putting people into MRI machines and scanning the brain while they are doing creativity exercises, basically, right? To understand what is happening up there. And unfortunately, we're not knowing a lot about that yet, but it's just going the research. But what we know is that we have basically different networks happening up there. There was this misconception lately, and still in some books, you can see that there's like left and right brain. And I don't know, creative, logical, bullshit. It's not that simple. Yeah. I mean, it's way more complex. What they see is that it's not just left and right brain, but it's a very complex interplay of different regions, right? And they have found that there are 3 different networks, but they just focus on 2 here. It's the execution mode network and default mode network. Mm-hmm. Execution is rather the thing, and that's very put simple, right? I'm also not the highest expert there, but execution mode network is rather the thing that is happening when you're like in a basic conscious mode of working, brainstorming about ideas, right? But a lot of ideas are not happening that way, but rather in our unconsciousness. And this is when you're activating basically your default mode network. And your default mode network gets activated through low cognitive load. So under the shower, like playing ping pong, going for a run, during our REM sleep phase, and so on. And what is happening there? You basically think in your consciousness while execution mode network is on, you think hard about a problem, you reflect, you talk to people, you do benchmarking. So you fill up your brain with an understanding of the problem. And then you activate your default mode network. And then it's what is the default mode network doing? Basically like a matching algorithm. It tries to match your problem understanding with everything that you have in your brain, and also the things that you're not are aware of anymore, probably, like deep back in your brain, basically. And then there's matching happening. And at some point, it might be the case that there is a match, and this is this moment of insight. And why it is happening in the shower? Because that's the moment your default mode network is activated, and it's just telling your consciousness basically, hey, I have something for you here. Just see what you can do with it. And that's the reason why we're not able to generate ideas on the spot in a workshop now, but we need to spread it out over a longer period of time and days to really like harness the power of the unconsciousness.
Yeah. So that explains a lot, because when COVID came, I thought, well, now's a good time to get in shape. So I go jogging for these every day on these canals, and that's where I get a lot of my ideas. It's like I'm just jogging along. So now I know why. So this is great.
Yeah. And that's interesting. If you mirror that with how we work in Siemens or in corporations, I still have the feeling that there's this light switch for creativity, right? So I turn it on and I turn it off. And then I just have a workshop and 2 hours, and then I need the ready-made idea. I don't know. So deliver, Toby, we need it like fast. And I'm like, well, I would say let's rather spread it out over a period of 1 week or 2 weeks. But the thing is, you need to think about the problem every day. So you need to kick into the ass of your unconsciousness every day a little bit. So only then the unconsciousness is still working on the process, right? And that's the reason why intrinsic motivated people are more creative, because they do it that way anyway. So they anyway think about the problem when they walk home, when they jog, whatever, right? The only thing is you can harness that understanding way more in a team when you really do that deliberately. So what do? We basically implement a so-called thinker box. It's a Teams channel, and we have calendar invites for every day. So we bring together the people, or at least like motivate them to really think and work on the problem every day, share their thoughts openly in a thinker box, like in a chat or with voice messages. And then through that, over a period of 1 or 2 weeks, you really build way more potential and give the people and the unconsciousness time to digest and work on it. And we did that actually. And that was like a project with external companies. And that at first they said, well, I don't have the time for like this, what you want to do there. But then we kind of like convinced them. And after doing it for a week, we really had sessions every day with Daimler was at that time. They said, "Whoa, that was incredible! What we really generated." They were surprised by them about their own outcome, basically. And then repeating that with other customers, they said, "Well, we should do that not for 1 week, but for 2 weeks." But the thing is that if you don't do it, you don't see and feel the outcome, So, but that's like a very simple thing that is so beneficial for really creative output.
Yeah. So we're going to talk later.
Okay, it's a match. Interview's over. It's a done deal.
I'm convinced already. So you just need to teach me now. So yeah.
Okay, but now let's talk about how you're being creative with your team and how you come up with new ideas. And maybe we can make it a bit more specific, because you already mentioned you were at the Inventors of the Year or last year, because you won. Because actually, by the way, for the listeners that do not even know what the hell is that. So Siemens has launched the Inventors of the Year, where they honor developers, researchers with big, great inventions in different categories. And your category was open innovation, right?
Right,
exactly. And can you maybe tell a little bit more about it? Because you won it last year, right?
Right.
Exactly, with your team. And can you tell, first of all, maybe just very short and simple, what is the invention all about? And also, we are quite curious to hear the process behind.
Oh, yeah. We're able to share it, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Externally,
there's websites out there.
Okay.
And I think also all people externally, Siemens externally, can also find more information about it everywhere on websites and stuff. And so it's like...
It's out there, and it's so in the United States there's an organization called DARPA, and it really fun DARPA. Yeah, if you ever watch a sci-fi movie or anything, they always talk about DARPA doing these secret projects, so that's where they keep the aliens or something like that.
Okay,
it's pretty funny. But DARPA was the organization that created GPS, the mouse, computer mouse. They didn't create themselves; they funded the research to do that. So the internet, which is a big one. So in our case, they funded a project to represent really complex geometry, because what was happening was that you could buy these 3D printers and you could do these really complex, crazy things, but representing the design was too hard because there was too much geometry and things. So they kind of saw this as a problem and funded us to work on that. So we came up with some, through collaboration, we came up with some really cool ways of representing that geometry as code. So you can kind of think of it as DNA if you want.
Okay.
So you're a person, you take up a lot of space, but your DNA is very small and it has a lot of information about you. So it's great for doing really complicated designs.
Okay, so you translate a geometry, like a design, like a 3D design, something into a code.
Yes, but it's actually a little bit the other way around. We have some code that represents the design. So when you kind of instantiate the code, like you do with DNA, you turn the DNA into an elephant, right?
That's great.
Yeah.
We need to talk.
Yeah. But it's doubly valuable because now we get a way to represent the design. But now going to manufacturing, the thing that we're really interested in is that really concise representation can now go to the manufacturing machine and you can manufacture from that little tiny representation. Yeah. And then the really cool thing that's happened since that invention that was great is, again, this generative AI, these large language models, because they're very good at talking to you in English or German or whatever you want, but they're also really good at programming. So now you could have it write a program that's actually the geometry that represents the product. So it's just exciting times right now.
It's basically I make it simple and probably not right, but I just could imagine talking to a CAD tool and say, hey, I need a circle here and a box there. Could you please bring that together? And I could imagine talking with a machine, and then it's
beyond that now. So it used to be that the CAD software you would draw a circle. Right. You draw the rectangles, and the CAD software would capture that and help you do it.
The mouse, basically, right?
Right. So it's computer-aided design. It's helping you. Now you can say, I need a new car, and it will generate a car. No, I need a new fast car, and I need a new car that holds 4 people in red. So now you're just giving the requirements, and it's going off and creating everything for you. So we're not there yet, right? You can't say, here's the BMW I want with all these options. But we're moving in that direction. So you're able to work. The designer's able to work at a higher level. He's not having to think of, how do I combine a cube and a cylinder together? The software takes care of that low level part.
Yeah, but I now understand your excitement about all that topic. So that sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And can you take us on this journey a little? How did you actually come up to those ideas? I mean, you saw that there is a challenge for designers, and then what did you do?
Yeah, again, this is where it's nice with these DARPA projects, in that you tend to you work with other organizations, so it's all publicly funded. And there's the same thing in Europe. There's publicly funded research that we can do here. So in our case, we partnered with Georgia Tech University, which is a very prominent university. Michigan State also very, very good in terms of optimization. We bought products that have come out of that university, and in Palo Alto Research Corporation. So we had some really good people in all those organizations. They're all looking at different things. Jarek Rosniak, who was the professor from Georgia Tech, has worked a lot on these creative ideas and algorithms for representing geometry. Nice. So a lot of it is.
And how long was the project?
It was about 4 or 5 years. So it was nice. It's nice because in the case of DARPA, they can give you here's $5 million. Just go do research. And their idea is to try to get these problems to the point where industry will take them over. Because right now industry says, well, it's just too hard. We can't work on that. So they try to advance the level up to the point industry can do it, which is what we're doing. So now Siemens gets to kind of profit from that research that we did, and do more things there. But it's really, in my case, it was really the collaboration, getting together for workshops, discussions, again, these side discussions are always so important rather than the formalized things. So I think that was a lot of it. And then we weren't the only team. There were other teams, folks from MIT and other universities that had teams set up as well. We'd get together, every few months and talk with them and see if there's places we could collaborate on new ideas as well.
Did you encounter any hurdles, any big blocker, any moment you thought will not work, or anything that really frustrated you, or anything you can share?
Yeah, well, and so that's kind of neat because we focus on several different things. One was just representing the design, which we have a really good solution for. The other part is the simulation, which is, how do you test how it's going to behave before you actually make it? Yeah. And then also the manufacturing part. So you got this really crazy, huge design. How do you get it to the manufacturing machine, and how do you do all these other things? One of the challenges, which is, was, designers don't like to write code. And our representation was writing code. Yeah. And they prefer to work, more visually on the screen. So I don't think we, back then we came up with the best solution to that. But then, a few years later now, we're talking with generative AI and these large language, ChatGPT, Llama 2 or a couple that I like, they can generate the code. So now you can go up and say, hey, ChatGPT, generate me some code that does this, this design. And so it kind of solves that problem too. So that was, something that was a challenge, but you wait long enough and someone comes up with a clever idea to solve it.
Nice.
Have you developed the whole project during also pandemic times? So a lot of virtual meetings and workshop and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we were fortunate that we started before the pandemic. Okay. And I remember literally sitting in dinner in Washington, D.C. with the folks, which was January right when the pandemic was starting, but we didn't quite know how big it was going to be, so we were still traveling. And it's kind of fun to talk with mathematicians on the pandemic because they have all these numbers and a couple of people really predicted what was going to happen there just from the math and how things spread and the geometric growth. So we were grounded already, so had the connection. So then we switch over to doing these virtual meetings after that. Okay,
but you develop actually the main things that's so like the key parts maybe during pandemic times and virtual meetings especially. And do you feel like that was also a challenge maybe to grow, and maybe it could have worked differently when it was a meeting more in person?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I think that the pandemic had negatives and positives for people. I do think face-to-face conversations are valuable, and the fact that we had those face-to-face conversations ahead of time and then we're able to back off to, that was good. I think it's much harder to go the other way where you're not doing the face-to-face. And even now, I think it's hard sometimes. We hire new people, and we're not going to the office as much. So it's hard to get connected to those people because you don't see them at the coffee pot. You don't see them in other areas. So I think that's probably a challenge a lot of people are thinking about right now.
And how does it affect creativity? What do you think? Have you experienced that maybe?
Yeah. So one of the I think one of the things that that's a good question. I'm trying to gauge whether if I look back, were we more creative before or now? I think there's some good tools out there that help. We do a lot with whiteboards and drawing pictures, but I think more creative tools would be good. It's kind of interesting. One of the other topics we work on a lot is this industrial metaverse topic, and I would imagine that in the industrial metaverse, you would have the opportunities to be more creative, but still be remote as well. At least in my personal, my son and I will get on to one of these tools, and you can create, sculpt things in the air virtually, and it's really pretty neat. You can do some really creative things, crazy things, So I'd be curious to see what new tools come out to kind
I
of.
think that is
help
definitely like improving the way of how we digitally work creatively together. Actually,
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
be a
I mean,
nice
but
next step.
you probably know more than I do. What are there things that are out there that coming now that are making creativity easier to do remotely? Or
I'm not aware of the tools that are out there that people are working on. What I'm seeing now is also the challenge, what you were mentioning about, like, we have the challenge that people are like not connected, and like remote work is, at least how we work remotely together right now, is not sufficient for really creative work. There was also a Nature magazine article published in 20 something, so pretty recently. They tried to understand and tried to like compare the work remotely versus in-person work, and they tried to guess or understand the influence on creative work. And when you try to be creative, you have always two different phases. Either it's divergent work or convergent work. You're aware of that? So divergent means like new options, breaking out of patterns, finding new ways of potential solutions, whatever. And especially for divergent work, it's way better if you do that in person compared to remote work teams. So there are different effects. So why it is like that? Just one example is that questioning is very helpful for divergent work, for creative work. But for questioning, we need at some point some social support. So you can imagine the last time you sit in a classroom and you don't get what the professor is saying and you don't want to feel dumb. So you're not bold enough potentially to raise your hand, but you ask your neighbor and like, hey, Bibi, did you also not get that?
Yeah.
So, and then she, don't get it, ask it. And then you get social support and then you raise the question, right? So those social things happening in a room are not the same like in a Teams chat, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I think there are a lot of things happening right now that is getting us more towards that we have better digital tools to like probably have better ways of collaborating and at least that's what I believe, but I'm not aware of the different tools what are there right now, and I'm not aware of industrial metaverse, how that looks like right now. But
one of my colleagues, Dr. Reed Williams, he's thought a lot about this too. In like today in a CAD system, you generally just work solitaire by yourself doing a design. And some systems are software, and Reed would like to take it a lot further, or getting to the point where you're if you've already worked online on a Word document, you can both be working on the same time and editing and doing things there. So doing that more in a geometry way, so you have a team kind of designing everything at the same time.
Are you also struggling with this remote in-person work? And if it's the case, do you have any thoughts on how you try to bring people together, or in which situations? So for what purpose do you think it's important to bring people together in person for your team, for example? I don't know. How do you do that?
Yeah, and I think everybody's struggling right now with this
definitely.
to a certain extent, right? It's a change in how we've worked. Certainly, the reasons I like to get together with other people are the more creative, more brainstorming type activities. So usually, what we'll do is if we're brainstorming, we'll say, okay, we're gonna set up a meeting.
So you meet in person for that?
But you always have a few people that they just really like not working that way, and so we'll set up a camera for something like that. So that's a really hard one. So I imagine as managers, leaders, where do you draw the line at letting people work in the situation where they're most comfortable?
Yes,
versus
that's a big question.
When you maybe some things are better done together. When do you force people to come in the office then? And I think that's that's one of those cases where I'm maybe glad I'm not the where I appreciate my management and them making these decisions. But me personally, I like to get together. I like the hybrid situation we have right now, where I think most people know that Siemens basically two or 3 days a week in the office, and the days out. And
I think that's also very important actually for creativity, because creativity as a human ability is pretty individual, different. Probably you probably have a different modus operandi for being creative than I have. So there are people who are like having a lot of ideas while they talk to people in a workshop setup in person, but there are also people who are like not having a single idea in such a setup, and they very often feel uncreative, but that's not the case. The only thing is that they rather need like the silent room, right? No other people, and really think, and then ideas are popping up. And I think especially for this, it's important to have this flexibility of how we work actually. The only thing is, and that's what we are trying to bring in now for like Siemens and as the creativity lab, to say, but if that's the case, we have more responsibility for every individual, right? To also reflect on their very own personal ability as creativity, basically, and say, okay, how do I need to do that? Because it's no longer the way that people are able to tell the people how they need to work, right? But they need to find their very own way. So I think this is a big struggle, because you have the individual like goals and aims, and someone feels better if he's alone, but they're also like on a team level, the goals and targets you want to achieve, and you're not able to achieve that potentially if everybody is just sitting at home, right? So and in order to balance that, I think it's so important to bring more of the understanding into every individual in the team, and I think, and also responsibility at the same time, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It just takes time to bring that to help everybody with the understanding, and also because it's even though it's been a few years now, it's still relatively new way of working for a lot of people. So,
and do you also have any techniques, tools, methods, anything in mind? Anything you apply for yourself in a team? You said brainstorming. Is there anything you love to apply, use?
Yeah, I think brainstorming is, especially in my current job, it's really important, just because we need to be coming up with the new ideas, and we need to be aware of the technology changes, and and how we can apply them to new areas, or our own new ideas. So I brainstorming, I always, and we do that.
Anything else
lots of
besides
times.
that?
Again, it goes back to some of the rituals we talked about too. I like going out to meet people for coffee, or like I said, now I'm in Germany. The beer gardens are awesome. It's amazing how creative you get with at least a half a beer. So maybe you had too many beers, then it goes the other way. But yeah, I think those types of things, these kind of side conversations, even like what we're doing right now, I think are really good for generating ideas. So.
Anything else? I mean, there are so many sophisticated techniques and tools and things out there, like, I don't know, design thinking. People talk about first principle thinking. That's, I don't know, a new technique coming from Elon Musk, I guess. And I don't know, stuff like that. Anything else? It's maybe it's a different direction than what you're thinking. Like TRIS, for example, is like a typical thing engineers use. Do you know TRIS?
TRIS? No. What is that? So maybe it's another one I should know then.
I don't know, probably has a different name in English, but it's
I don't know.
TRIZ. I don't know, but I can look it up. But I'm sorry, but I interrupted you.
I mean, the other thing that I like a lot is the people in Munich are very lucky, because we have this urban collab here that Siemens involved in. The other
There's also the makerspace in there. Right?
So they have this nice makerspace there. So that's if you're constantly surrounded by Siemens people, you're limited a little bit. So these maker labs are awesome, especially for people that are you want to build things, right? Mm-hmm. Or I shouldn't say build things. They have sewing machines. They have all kinds of different.
Just experimenting.
Just experimenting, And you by experimenting, you come up with so many new ideas. It's I didn't even think of that. So I think there's other ones, in Berlin and other places that have them as well. And I think that's a really good area to do it. Even for people that want to learn about designing things, so they have one of the products that Siemens has is Solid Edge, which is really kind of focused on mainstream, if you're designing blenders or machinery or other things like that. But there's a community edition that's free to everybody, so your kids can use it. You can use it. You can start creating your own things using Siemens software. So I think those are all nice ways, again, to kind of expand out and in a way that's fun too. even in a way that you can do with your kids or other family members. So
nice. So what I'm still curious about, and I think that's a little bit of a different topic, but we already touched upon that. So it's a machine.
Do we want to have a challenge?
Yeah.
Or do we have time for that?
Yeah. Do you have a
And then we
challenge
can talk
prepared?
about machines?
Okay. Do you have a challenge prepared?
No, but I'm coming up with one. Maybe.
Okay. Challenge.
Surprise! Challenge time! I think we do the problem-solving challenge stuff. I just drop it and then you'll say.
Okay, let's go, baby.
So just imagine you are on an island and there is a big. What is it? There is a big dinosaur and want to attack you, but you have only 3 objects with you, and you have to somehow get out of this situation.
Okay, now I'm curious. What are the 3
What
objects?
are the 3 objects? You should also come up with one.
Toilet paper.
okay.
That's something.
Then you have a coffee cup, because that's normal to bring on an island. And the third one is...
A pineapple.
Oh.
So you have a pineapple,
Toilet paper,
like a coffee
and
cup, and a toilet paper.
Coffee.
What kind of dinosaur is it?
Like
It's a really, I don't know.
T-Rex.
Yeah,
T-Rex.
T-Rex.
Oh,
yes,
T-Rex is
that's the
hard.
one.
Because the first thing is I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe it's, it's a scary dinosaur, but maybe it's not really that scary. So, and
Yes,
I like
it
to
is
collaborate, so maybe I can get that
Using your
domestic
strength.
dinosaur to work with me, and maybe we can both get off the island some way. But the T-Rex is probably going to be, he's not going to want the pineapple to eat, so he's going to want to eat me. So that's a little
Yeah,
more
but probably you're
challenging.
gonna find a way to like make him
Collaborate,
as nice as a dog.
Well, that
probably,
would
with- on a leash,
be
right?
my first thing, because I love dogs. We have 3, and my wife. Yeah, we do a lot of work with these shelters too. So so I tend to see animals as happy things. I'm probably not a T-Rex, but you never know. So that would be my first attempt. I'd probably give it up right away, which is to make friends with the T-Rex. Wow, what would you do to get away? So T-Rex don't swim, so maybe I can go.
Don't forget you have a coffee mug.
Yeah, and a pineapple. Yeah,
And a toilet paper. I mean,
the toilet paper's hard. I guess you could maybe try to cover up he comes down to bite you and you.
Or you try to
you can wrap the toilet paper around his eyes. to
Yeah,
make him blind.
thinking that, or you could, maybe you could use the pineapple and the acid on the toilet paper, and it would bother his eyes enough that he would not be able to see me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's different. And then I'd go drink coffee afterwards.
Beautiful.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a great creative challenge. Good job.
Okay, now we're talking about machines. Is a machine, can a machine really be creative? I'm in touch with a lot of researchers in that creativity bubble. There's just one, David Cropley, here to mention, a nice guy and professor of creativity and engineering actually in Australia. He just came over to Munich to visit us and talk about that. And I think there's the challenge is right now that, in my point of view, there's like too big of a hype that everybody's saying, hey, generative AI is creative. And I think, yes, in a way, it is, for me, rather augmenting our human creativity. But it's not, and that's the fear I have, we should not tell the people that the AI is creative and there's no need anymore from your side. But I think still the real creative act is still on the human side. But I'm curious to learn from your expertise.
I think you're right. I would pretty much have the same opinion there. One of the examples a lot of times I do with AI is with these large language models and this transformer architecture, you can go through and say, I'm going to feed in, all the works of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And so the way it works is you feed in the words and it makes predictions on what the next word's going to be. And eventually you can get to the point where it knows enough that it can just start writing in the style of Shakespeare. So if you had a child that says, he's writing new sonnets or new things in the style of Shakespeare, you'd say that's probably creative. but the machine didn't create that style, right? It's learning to emulate the style, and maybe the real creativity was in coming up with those styles as well. So would a machine come up with a new way of composing the English language? And maybe it would. Maybe we're getting in some place like that. So I see it as kind of nibbling on some of the edges of creativity, some of the simpler things that are out there. I think the other ones are the image generation is the same thing. Is you can have it draw pictures in the style of some artist. Which is really cool. I couldn't do that, and the results are new works that you haven't seen before. But I haven't seen it go that next level of like, hey, this machine is this whole new artist, right?
That's the thing.
Yeah,
there's a nice story that there was a big art exhibition announced in New York. I think I don't remember the exact date, but. Anyway, and people were requested to hand in artwork basically to showcase there. And there was an artist, he at that time was anonymous, sending in a pissoir basically, put on a wooden block. So just put it on top of that and called it the fountain. You have heard of that?
No.
The fountain. And at that time it was like a big... a negative reaction actually, and everybody was like shocked that someone will send a pissoir in and call it an artwork, right? Because at that time the understanding of what art was still, hey, you have to craft it with your own hands, right? So at that time rejected, everybody hated it. It was a big negative reaction. Today this artwork and this anonymous artist is celebrated as the beginning of modern art, and it even coined the term of ready-made art, right? So it kind of shifted the whole understanding of what is art and what is art not, basically. And that is just typically, for me, an example to showcase, hey, that's something I'm, at least in my point of view and in my expertise, you can tell me probably that I'm wrong, but that's something the large language models are not able to do. They're not able to like set a new goal basically for themselves or say, no, that's the scope basically, this is art, right? And this artist was able to say, no, there's an art outside of your current definition of art, right? And I think that's for me the real breaking out of patterns. That's the real divergent work.
Right.
Generative AI is not able to do right now.
Yeah, and so
is that true?
I think it's true to an extent. Now, I guess the question would be, would I be, right now I say, yeah, that's probably true, but I'm going to say I'm 60% sure.
Yeah.
And I wonder if in a couple of years, the way things keep developing, I'm going to be less sure.
Yeah, that might be possible in the future, right?
So that's it. And you see a lot of things that are, again, because creativity is a spectrum. Mm-hmm. So you see it doing things that we would say if kids were doing or I was doing, it can do a better job than me already. Now, it can't get anywhere near the talent or the trained people that are at this level.
Yeah.
So I don't know how far it can go is maybe the question for me.
Yeah.
But already, colleagues, if we need some fancy image for a PowerPoint slide, it's awfully easy to go out there and say, give me a high resolution picture. I actually did this as a presentation. I said, showing DNA turning into an elephant. And it came up with this nice image that I used in my presentation. So I was doing like computational design in New York, and I said, I'll put that in there. So that is certainly beginnings of that. So.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is when I dive into that discussion of generative AI, is it creative or not, what I see or what is it capable of doing, what I see that the practitioners are pretty enthusiastic, and I think it's also, probably about the Gartner hype cycle, right? So there's always, if there's something new, there's a hype, and over over expectation basically of what is capable of doing. But if you really look into what the researchers that are really deep down into the technologies say, they are kind of more conservative, say, hey, well, might be possible, but not that fast.
It's not
right now.
And that the Gartner Hyde cycle is a good example. This is a good example. Yeah, we're at the top of that peak. They are very close to it. So it's I have a lot of fun with it because sometimes it does these amazing things. And then I asked it one time to tell me who I was, and it was awesome because I've apparently started like multiple companies. I'm this rich guy that has tons of patents, and it was just this terrible. It was totally wrong. It was wonderful. I wish it was all true, but it was just so funny that they get these crazy ideas from it. So it has a lot of. There's still a lot of work to be done.
Nice.
But what do you think in the end are the main benefits or main assets we as humans still have that machines will definitely not be capable of?
Well, I would not say definitely not capable of. The things that I think are still the challenge.
I think the technology of larger language models right now is, I guess, what we should talk about. What is the limitation of this technology right now? There might be a new technology, and I think there are already endeavors of starting a different approach, right?
So they do a lot of things that appear to be creative, but are they really creative, or are they just doing things that look that way? And I think that's kind of the interesting. Are these large language models really working like the human brain? And I think most people will say no, they're not. Now they're generating something that's some of the same outputs, which is kind of interesting. I think certainly creativity is one of them, especially the higher level of creativity. I think the understanding of what's true and not true is a challenge because sometimes it will go off. They call it hallucinations. I don't know if that's the right term, but it'll go off on these side stories, and it will start telling you, I'm alive, or they had lots of stories like that are, and it's probably not really alive. It's just giving answers that it thinks the person wants to hear. So it's I think those are, understanding what's true. I think obviously some of the moral aspects of it are complicated, but they're complicated for people too. So it's, so it's, I think a lot of those things are going to be hard. I think the other one is that we talk a lot about too is this kind of this traceability or traceable AI. So how do you, when it comes up with you say something, it says something back. How did it come up with that reason? What were the reasons for saying something like that? And I think that's it's hard for, especially traditional software developers, because the code is always very clear. If then you know exactly what's going to happen, and so for them it's like, well, it's just code. It's just, but it's not. It's these AI models are more like trying to understand the human brain sometimes. So.
Is it possible today to trace everything?
No.
Right?
It's a lot like with people. It's like why did they say that? And even if you had all the instrumentation on your head and everything, it's like there's so many things that contribute to it. So you can't. You can't always trace it, so that's a challenge. The other another challenge is these things learn. But what are they learning from? So you have data that's could be biased. You have data that is proprietary, and or should you be training on proprietary data because that's someone else's data, right? And boy, it's a complicated thing right now. So as a researcher, I'm kind of glad I'm more focused on some. Not simpler problems or hard problems, but geometry, right? That's not people aren't too worried about, what geometry I create. But some of these other things is much more challenging.
Nice.
But I think super exciting to be in that time right now to explore all these different kind of possibilities and all this stuff. So
it is, and it's all that's a nice thing about. It's all cyclical, right? And so a lot of these geometry problems that I particularly like. We were in kind of a lull, like we kind of understood it a lot, and then I always say that the 3D printing people, the people doing additive manufacturing, they're my best friends because all of a sudden they created all these new problems on how to represent geometry. So now I can focus on the geometry again. And then now the AI again, how do we get AI thinking about the 3D space and creating things and beyond just text and pretty pictures. So, and
definitely an interesting time, right?
Yeah, and then the other side is how do you make sure Siemens stays on top of these things too? Because with that's a lot of disruption out there for all these companies. So not just Siemens, but any company.
So we need even more creativity.
Yeah, seriously, I think you're exactly right.
After this, probably, looking at the time, we're coming, I guess, more and more to the end of our podcast session, even though we could probably continue forever talking about that because it's super interesting. But after this discussion, you're a little bit of an insight in what is creativity, our discussion on also generative AI, your impressive experience of all what you did in your life, and now this hot topic. What do you think is a company such as Siemens already doing enough for creativity? Should we foster that? Is that something? What do you think? We should invest more.
Oh yeah, well,
like a status quo. How do you perceive the status quo?
No, I think I've already kind of said that earlier. Was that I do think we should focus more on creativity, just because, and this isn't just Siemens. It's probably most companies, just because things change so quickly, and are changing faster and faster. We're accelerating, so you have to be able to come up with new ideas very quickly and. From the idea to the creation of a product that you sell or software that you sell, you have to be able to do that very quickly. So I think that's a really important thing. It's not the same. It's not like you're doing the same job like you've been doing for the last 10 years, right? So and I think creativity is a huge part of that as well. And it's always, I always want Siemens to go faster. That's my always, and again, anytime you're in a big company, it's a challenge, but yeah.
Okay, so still a lot of work to do. And
yes,
I think
it is.
we need to partner up to support that endeavor.
But great that we had a match today.
Yeah. You're always the master of ceremony, Bianca.
Yes.
What's the famous last question?
The last question for sharing to our listeners. What would you recommend them to when it comes to creativity? What would you give them as an advice?
That one is just get out there and experiment and try things. That's really the main thing. And there's so many opportunities out there to do that at all levels, right? So if you're at a beginning level and you want to learn about design, go get some software and play with it. If you want to 3D print, go to the Maker Labs or even buy a printer. If you're at higher levels, let's say you're at Siemens or some other big companies where you're thinking about how can we manufacture better. Come talk to, in our case, come talk to Siemens T about some of the things that we're working on there. There's just a lot of, again, things are moving quickly. We're working very hard to stay on top of it, and those are kind of the things I would think about.
Great. Lovely, right?
Beautiful last words. Thank you, Mark. Or should
Thanks
I
for
say
being
Bernard?
here.
Bernard, yeah. You remember that now. I'm going to go back to work and it was, hey, Bernard.
Bernard, thank you very much. It was a
Thanks
pleasure
for
having
being
you.
here.
Yeah.
Hopefully you also enjoyed it.
Yes, and I'm going to do my own podcast and invite you on it next. That's because I'm going to hear more about creativity here. So,
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.